So we have these forms in the context of when it's using it as this whole tranquility meaning, and this is a stable word form, hence. There's a little bit of explaining to do when it comes to the marbuta shape. This final shape that's sort of like a little ball at the end of the cursive line. This can either act as a T or an H, and this is very crucial to understand. I'll try to explain this as best I can. So we'll look first on the shape on to make it easy, on the right here, okay? So Alif Lam, and then we start our word here with it's a sin here because it doesn't have the dots, right? But for the sake of time, that's a shin. It's Shekinah, not Sakina, right? So anyway, so we have the shape here, then we have a K, then we have a Y, then we have a T, or sorry, Y, N, and then a T. So the marbuta is acting as this T, as you can see up here. SKYNT, or Shin KYNT. Okay? But when we find this form, it's seen here, this case without the definite article, but regardless, what you can see is that you have Sakina, and then you have the T as a peak, and then additionally to that, you have the marbuta. So the marbuta in this instance is acting as the H suffix, and in this instance, it's acting as the T. The role of the peak of this T here is equivalent of the role of this here. This is all to say, essentially, that the actual form of the word we're dealing with is SKYNT, where the H is a suffix to mean his, which we do see in the sin here. They do translate that over, where the marbuta after the T here acts as the suffix his. So this is the word form we're really looking at here, SKYNT. Okay? So we'll go and have a look here at the root. I mentioned it about this idea of inhabit or to dwell in a place as being the foundational Old Testament meaning of this root, the ShKN root. It also has, interestingly, a meaning to donate or gift, but these are secondary, tertiary meanings. The main sense here for our purposes, of course, is the dwelling, which is then linked to the dwelling of God, which we then see in sources like this. This is the Syriac, so just to clarify, when we're looking at here in the previous slide, so this slide here for the base root, I'm looking at the Aramaic here. This is from the Comprehensive Aramaic Lexicon for the root. This source here is a lexicon called Margolios, like almost like a Margot, like a French lady. But so this source in the lexicon, we see this is what's annoying is this is another type of Syriac, but I'll explain my best I can. So this like lumpy shape that looks almost like a toupee, this is the shin. This is the K, this loop here, that it's similar to the shape in the Arabic actually, so that's nice. So shek, the first peak is the Y, the second peak, which is larger, is the N. This also is very reminiscent of Arabic, right, JC? I've noticed this more and more when I'm looking into this type of Syriac script. It's very reminiscent of what we see in Arabic in terms of peak usage and all these different factors. So that's quite interesting, just to point out. But anyway, so we have sha, k, I, na, t, aleph. So the aleph here is acting as the definite article. So this written in the way that the Arabic script functions would just be written as al instead of having the a at the end. So it would be like al shake I na te, which is what we see then in the orthography of the Quranic text. So then it's talking about this word. So how does it define this word? A resting place, habituation, tabernacle, temple, and then more specifically, this concept, right? You can define the term in terms of what it literally means, and then you can define it more so in terms of its conceptualization with all of the loaded concepts and all that's packed into it. So the Shekinah, this is from Neo-Hebrew. The Shekinah, the visible glory of the divine presence, right? So that was what I was suggesting with the whole idea of Christ and the Spirit both taking the role of this Shekinah, like the actual visible image that we have, right? Christ, he was visibly there, and then the indwelling also happens, not just the visibleness, but you get what I'm getting at there, right? So it's like a place of dwelling of God, like almost like a house of God. It's this kind of idea, right? So you could almost see that their Kaaba today is kind of drawing on this kind of idea where for some reason we don't know this thing is super important. Well, we have our traditions to make sense of it, but I would say that foundationally comes out of this whole idea of God dwelling within this rock, literally. But anyway, putting that aside, this is the word form in the Syriac defined in this lexicon. On the right side here, we can see more meanings. Oh, I guess this is the French part. We don't need to read the French part. Okay, so then we'll look at some more specific. This is getting exactly to the word form. I've just been showing here more so, like this is the exact word form too, but let's look at the Aramaic. This is where it's more dense because the usage of this word would have been more focused in the Jewish Aramaic, right? So therefore, or in Jewish communities, therefore this concept is more developed in the Aramaic. So it's specifically the dwelling, the divine presence. So I keep harping the same point again and again, but it's very explicitly the longer form of Shin, K, Y, N, and then you can see here T, right, with the different article or whatnot, Shekinah, right? So this is the exact word form we find. So when we're looking at these instances of this orthography in the text, this is what we should be caring about, these three definitions, right? So in particular, divinity, a sanctuary, so somewhere where the divine is dwelling, makes sense. Dwelling, of course, being the primary meaning from the root. And then, of course, the Shekinah, the divine presence. And here we can see a couple examples. I'll just sort of pick one. The Holy One caused his divine presence to dwell upon you. Sounds very familiar, right? But here the glory of the Lord's presence has been revealed vision after vision, right? So just to point out a little funny thing, I saw that ShKN has a tertiary meaning in the Aramaic of a demonic force. So you can see how not everyone was on the same page in regards to this root and the concept development and all that. That's probably what's happening there, a reflection of that. But yeah, so in summary then, JC, take it away.
Yeah, so this one actually, well, I'm actually looking at the clock and it looks like it's probably our shortest live stream yet. And I think one of the shortest ones that we had before was about the Holy Spirit. And for the same reason that this one is so short, because it's so simple. It's just look at this word. It has a very clear meaning to anybody around in the 7th century. And look how they have actually trying to hide the meaning. But when we put the original on top or the real one on top, the verses start to make sense. So one of the clues that we have actually seen in order to see, hey, hang on a minute, so that was not the meaning of this word in the 7th century, is from Murad. Murad did not translate the word, and that is an immediate sus. We need to actually look into it. I should have actually added the sus emoji on that one. Anyway, so also that the meaning according to the sin makes no sense. Again, this is an Abrahamic faith. When we have seen words before, such as the backbone and the ribs, we see how that doesn't make any sense. Then we look into it in a bit more detail, and then it makes sense. When we are looking at this word translated as tranquility, it's like, what does that even mean? It is not part of the Abrahamic faiths. What does it mean that he sent the tranquility over his messenger and those who followed him? So that tranquility just seems to be a word they used there in order for you to not really see that they were hiding a word that everybody understood in the 7th century, which actually incidentally points us towards these changes happening later, because in the 7th century, everybody would have understood what it was. So we have to consider the context. This book is all about Jesus as the Messiah. So if it says that he descended his Shekinah, we know already what it means. If this book did not mention Jesus as the Messiah at all, and it had only Jewish legends, like we're saying with Shai and these sort of things, the meaning would be different. It would be, okay, so this is talking about the presence of God. But when we look at this as a whole, and we see that when it's talking about the messenger and those who followed him, we know full well, or at least we should at this point, that the messenger is Jesus, and those who followed him would be the apostles. Like, that's what it was. But what happens when we read those verses now? Somebody's saying, no, that was Muhammad, and then the Sahaba and anybody else that follow him. And it's like, that's not in the book. Like, literally, it isn't. So we know it's about Jesus, and the meaning of descending something on him and those who followed him, it makes sense, complete sense from a Christian point of view. It makes absolutely no sense in the Islamic tradition, particularly when we realize that the stories are not about Muhammad. And also, what is this? The meaning of Shekinah appears to have been hidden by, again, the standard Islamic narrative. Exactly the same case that we saw with the Holy Spirit. It becomes Jibreel. So we have these terms, like Kash said a moment ago. It's like, oh, what gave the game away? It's like, yeah, you are talking about the Holy Spirit in your book. That's a clear giveaway. So they had to hide that. And what they did is they just took the name Jibreel and they put it on top. The same with the Shekinah, different effect, but exactly the same outcome. To hide the meaning of something, in this case, or in the case of both the Holy Spirit and Shekinah, would be the Spirit. And this actually shows the successful attempt at hiding the origins of the book by reinventing the meaning of words. So this is pretty much what we have seen in every single show so far, and everything else that we've got prepared and all of the research. The book does not contain Muhammad anywhere, and we've done a couple of shows already on that, and we're going to have more to say about it. So the book was borrowed from all of these different sources. We're seeing some Jewish legends with Shai, and we're seeing a lot of the Christian context with John, and everything that Kash and I are doing, delving into the meaning of these words. We are seeing that the book is very void of the Hijaz and Muhammad and Islam. Those things are not there. The book borrowed from many sources, and the primary source so far, or I would actually go and say, I believe the primary source would have been Christian text, and they really did everything they could to hide that and to create a whole different narrative on top. But things like the Holy Spirit and the and Shekinah, they really give them the game away. It's been a really long time. This has been around for over 1,000 years, but now we're starting to see that those things don't make any sense. That being said, it was a very successful, not really attempt, but it was a successful mission of really taking one book that actually talk about one particular topic and then changing everything really, really successfully and telling the world that it meant something else. But because they didn't destroy the book and write another one from scratch, we still can look at the book and decipher words through many different means. And some, like Shekinah, like today, has been just looking at it and saying, hey, the Islamic interpretation of this word makes no sense. But if we look at the Christian one next to Jesus, it actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's been my experience really, like heavily recently, especially. The dominoes are falling quicker and quicker now. It's just that the methodology revises itself constantly and all this. And anyway, point being is that I'm reading verses where it originally is talking about something like totally, vacuous and like whatever. And then the verse, oh yeah, today I'm not going to give details because we're waiting for the whole stream. But today I was reading the verses with the whole, manat, wal, aluza, and all this kind of nonsense, right? Where it's talking about to he, the females, and to you, the man. Like none of these words or concepts in succession mean anything at all, right? So I go through them and suddenly it's obsessed with Jesus, obsessed with Mary. It's obsessed with Mary, calling her the appointed one through which would come the guide and all this kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, okay. So we have a worthwhile reading, a text that's worthwhile reading. We just have to break through the first layer. We just have to read it as a Syro-Aramaic text, which is why Christoph Luxemburg, we're on his shoulders. He's a giant for us because, I was sort of playing with like, okay, there's Ethiopic origin, so maybe there's a bigger picture than just Syro-Aramaic. There's a lot of stuff going on here. I'm seeing a lot of Hebrew roots and all that. But at the foundational level, I'm going to say like 90 to 95% of the words are going to be Syro-Aramaic. Which what that means basically is that, well, Aramaic is the language family, and then Syriac is a particular sub-dialect of Aramaic. So basically we have influence from that dialect specifically, but then the broader Aramaic more heavily. That's where the foundational terms and the tradition, colloquially in terms of what theological terms they use and what language they use, that's where it derives. So essentially we have this, like you said, for over 1,000 years, something like 1,400 years in terms of the textual tradition itself. We probably lost how to read the textual tradition maybe 1,200, 1,100, 1,200 years ago, something like that. I don't know exactly the dates. But for at least 1,000 years now, it's been a text where people point to it and pretend to be able to read it. And that's pretty gross, I would say. For that to be the case, really. Like, that's your history as a people group and all this. You believe these myths about what happened in the 7th century. How did you and your parents stop being Christian? That's foundationally the question. And then you replaced, like, why did you stop being Christian? Well, there was this guy called Muhammad in the Hijaz in Mecca. It's like, let me stop you there. There was no Mecca.